You've probably said it 1,000 times. You're beautiful. It feels natural, polite, the safe thing to say, right? It's a compliment that slides out of conversation like habit. But here's the hard truth. Those 3 words have become background noise. They no longer land. They don't stir. They don't change the way a woman feels about herself when she hears them. Saying you're beautiful has become easy. And because it's easy, it's often empty. That doesn't mean beauty isn't important. Of course it matters. But desire rarely begins with the obvious. It begins in the quiet spaces, in the things that are not usually noticed. The nuance beneath her smile, the tiny hesitation in her voice, the way she tilts her head when something touches her heart. Desire lives where attention goes deeper than the surface. It lives in what you notice that other people don't. When a man tells a woman, "You're beautiful," what he's often doing, without realizing it, is repeating what everyone else has already said. He's placing her on a pedestal, offering a familiar label, hoping for a reward, attention, validation, maybe intimacy. But she's heard that script since adolescence. She doesn't need another mirror that reflects what the world already sees. What she craves is not a reflection of her looks. She craves being seen differently. She wants someone to witness the invisible. Real desire starts when you see what's hidden. Not her makeup, not her curves, but the subtle habits, the contradictions, the stories tucked behind her eyes. Tell her something that reaches below the protocol of compliments. Say, "I love how you slow down before you laugh, as if you're deciding whether to let the world in." Or, "There's a way you listen, like you collect moments." Those lines do something the usual praise never will. They move her because they show attention, not appraisal. Attention matters because it signals presence. It tells her you are not scanning for an advantage, you are actually paying attention. And attention, sharpened and specific, is a kind of rarity. Most people speak to be liked. Most men give compliments to earn something. When you instead speak from observation, you don't seek a transaction. You offer recognition. You reflect back an interior detail that she may not even be aware she's wearing so visibly. That moment disorients her in a useful way, not manipulative, but interruptive. You remove her from the conveyor belt of platitudes and place her into the experience of being properly seen. This is not about being poetic for the sake of theatrics. It's about psychological alignment. Desire, for many women, is less about a single look or a rehearsed line and more about the quality of the attention they receive. Women often respond to how they feel inside the interaction: safe, curious, interesting, understood. That feeling is what invites longing. Praise without presence is hollow. Presence without insight is infinitely more compelling. Let me be direct. Complimenting a woman's beauty often carries the hidden assumption that your value is tied to recognizing hers, like you're giving something small in order to get something in return. That dynamic places you in the role of the performer and her in the role of the judge. It creates a transactional energy. True masculine presence doesn't operate like that. It doesn't offer to impress. It reveals. It reflects. It points to what is real, not what is commercially desirable. There's a concept relationship experts often talk about: erotic intelligence, the idea that attraction is as much about imagination as it is about looks. When curiosity replaces certainty, when observation replaces flattery, when presence replaces performance, the psychological space between two people deepens. That space invites erotic thinking. It allows the mind to begin filling in what's not said. It makes mystery possible. So, what do you say instead of "you're beautiful"? Start with simple, observant sentences that require you to actually be there, mentally and emotionally. "There's a thought behind your smile that I want to hear." "I noticed how your hands move when you get passionate about something." "I can tell you're holding back a story. I want to know it." Those lines are precise. They require you to have listened. They require you to be present. And that changes the dynamic immediately. You'll notice too that these kinds of observations feel a little disorienting, but in a good way. They interrupt a pattern she's used to, and they invite curiosity. When you speak to something private, something that is not on display, you awaken a part of her that longs to be explored. She feels less like an object to be admired and more like a person to be discovered. Desire flows from that distinction. This doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you literate in human attention. It means you've learned to value presence over performance. The difference is subtle but radical. Men who master this don't waste breath on generic praise. They use words to wake an inner response. They reflect back her interior life. And by doing so, they create intimacy that's not transactional. Here's a practical example. Instead of saying, "You look amazing," try something like, "There's a quiet intensity when you listen. It makes people talk differently around you." See how differently that lands? It's not about appearance. It's about effect. It's about the way she impacts the room. That's meaningful. It suggests you've noticed consequence, not just surface. And notice what this requires from you. It demands presence. It demands self-work. You can't fake this. You can't memorize clever lines and expect the same result. Authentic observation requires that you actually be awake in your body and in your attention. It requires emotional honesty. If you're disconnected from your own interior life, you won't be able to perceive hers. That's the catch. The deeper your capacity to feel and to hold your feelings without being ruled by them, the more accurate your observations will be, and the more powerfully they'll land. Women aren't asking for endless flattery. They're asking to be relevant, to matter in a way that isn't reducible to appearance. They want to be seen for the parts that don't fit neatly into profiles and photographs. When you point to those parts with clarity and steadiness, you give them the experience of being known. That experience ignites desire in ways compliments never will. This is not an invitation to be intense or heavy. You don't need to interrogate someone's past at a dinner first date. But do be curious. Listen for the little details. A repeated phrase, a playful anger, a fleeting sadness, and speak from that observation. You hesitate before you laugh, like you're testing whether it's safe to let go. That sentence does more than "you're beautiful" ever could. It tells her you're paying attention to how she moves through the world. Now, let me be very clear. Presence and observation are not weapons. They're containers. They are the conditions under which emotional safety grows. When a woman feels safe, she can relax her performance and her deeper self becomes accessible. That's what draws her toward you. Not your lines, not your bravado, but your capacity to hold space so she can unspool. And here is a counterintuitive truth. The less you chase superficial arousal, the more you create a deep, lasting attraction. When your attention is not about earning validation, it becomes generous. When you're generous in attention, women feel both honored and curious. They feel seen for who they are, not just for how they look. That's the kind of magnetism that lingers. So what changes practically? Stop defaulting to compliments about appearance. Stop trying to win her with predictable praise. Instead, develop the habit of noticing one interior detail per conversation. Comment on it, lightly, with precision. Ask about it. Give her a chance to elaborate. The effect will be immediate. She will lean in. She will show you more. And when she shows you more, mutual depth grows. Remember, you cannot fake this. If you're emotionally closed off, if you're distracted by your own agenda, your observations will feel forced. Women are finely tuned to authenticity. They sense the difference between someone who is simply rehearsing an angle and someone who is genuinely present. So do the internal work. Practice being calm, curious, and anchored. Learn to listen without immediately jumping to response. Let silence do some of the heavy lifting. Often, the space you leave between your questions and your comments allows her to reveal the parts you actually want to know. Over time, this way of engaging changes more than single interactions. It changes how women experience you. You become less of a collection of external attributes and more of an experience. People will start remembering how you made them feel rather than what you said. That is the difference between transient attraction and real desire. So, to close, if you want to awaken desire, stop giving what's already abundant. Don't give another, you're beautiful. Give attention that is specific, fearless, and tender. Speak to what is hidden, not what is on display. Let your curiosity replace your need to impress. Show up grounded, listen well, and say what arises from that presence. That is the language that reaches under the skin. That is the language that makes her feel seen, known, and ultimately desired. Because in the end, women don't long for more compliments. They long to matter, to be relevant in the gaze of a man who has the capacity to notice what most people miss. Be that man. Be present, precise, and brave enough to reflect her interior. And watch how the ordinary turns into something unforgettable.